Hi, everyone. Welcome to Spoiler Alert. I'm Sean, your host. With me today, Alana. Alana, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Sean. Thank you very much for having me on Spoiler Alert. It's always great chatting to you and our special guests on the show.
Yeah, that's true. And we do have a very special guest we can't wait to talk to. But first of all, let's talk to our players about what they can expect in this update.
Yeah, so this update, we have titled it Uprising. And the reason for this, well, I'll let our special guest dive into that a little bit more. But our special event kicks off this update and players can earn the Porsche 911 Turbo S.
Very cool car. And speaking of cool cars, our Proving Grounds event is looking ultra classy this update as the 2020 Aston Martin Vantage is up for grabs.
Yes, I love a classy Aston Martin in our game. On top of that, we have our latest breakout event, and players can team up with Chris and Heidi to thwart our cop scheme, earning them the Lotus Esprit V8 Sport 350.
That's right. The Lotus is a beautiful car. I can't wait for players to get their hands on that. Very cool. We have more cars that are going to be unlocked for customization in the mod shop. So players, get in there, customize your cars, post them on socials, tag us. We love seeing what you guys come up with. So we're really excited to see that. And now I can finally introduce our guest. So joining us to talk about our latest update is Jake, one of our designers on Need for Speed No Limits. Jake, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. As Sean said, I'm one of the designers on Need for Speed No Limits. I work exclusively on content, so that's making stuff for people to play, from special events to car series to campaign chapters, and of course, the reason why we're here, the Revolution arc, which is continuing with the latest event, Uprising.
Great. Thank you, Jake. Thanks for joining us. So as you said, we are continuing Uprising this update, and it's our second of 3 major story events wrapping up. So some of these plots go back about 5 years, which is pretty much most of the history of our game. So I wanted to ask you, what's it like going into an arc and then trying to wrap something that's been around for so long in a way that's satisfying for some of those long-term players who've been there from day one?
Yeah, so it's been a pretty big undertaking, to be honest. We're talking about plot threads that have been running for almost as long as No Limits has been live. So tying that all together in a satisfying way has been an interesting challenge. I came on board for Midnight Boulevard, so I've been fortunate enough to kind of draw on a lot of the groundwork that was already there. One of our former designers, Stephen, was responsible for setting the whole Organizers saga in motion back in the day, and that spanning the Devil's Run, Syndicate, and Dust Howler arcs that have steadily been wrapping up since then. As for kind of the goal, I guess, or objective, I guess the main thing I wanted to keep in mind going into it was giving all the major players a chance to shine. And that's like the Underworld to Wolf Squad and kind of everyone the player has met and maybe fought along the way. Revolution is the end of everything we've been building up to. So we've been saving the best and biggest moments to last. And that's something that Uprising is definitely going to explore. So I hope players are going to enjoy it. And speaking of which, the finale event, which will conclude this whole saga, all these plot threads, is also coming up soon. And I really hope the players enjoy it.
So you've got all these plot threads, all these things have been going on for 5 years or around there. Plus, we have over 100 characters like in the game. It's actually pretty massive. Like, how far out do you plan that? Because this has become a really big saga.
Yeah, so for something like the Revolution arc, we needed to get down a lot of the major beats pretty far in advance. So for something like the Devil's Run group, which it relies upon, we needed to kind of aim for each member of the squad we were going to gradually introduce. Or for something like the Dust Howlers, we need to kind of build up to that Dust Howlers Zenith conflict that we explored. But for something more like seasonal or one-off or kind of like a set theme, That's something that's generally less set in stone, and we'll kind of go into pre-production for the event with a basic premise in mind and just kind of build out from there. Characters themselves are kind of on a similar note where they're informed by like what we want to explore in the event and like their personality, their objectives, what their kind of role is in the event, that kind of thing. A good example of this, as we talked about recently, was with Lieutenant Jane, the stone cold face of the BRPD, following Rivera's dismissal and her leading the war on the underground.
Great. It's very, very detailed and very complex. And I guess like what I wanted to know is what are some of the challenges that you face when you're writing these stories for mobile? Because it's quite episodic and it's like watching a new TV episode each update. So how do you keep it interesting to convey stories around racing every update?
Yeah, so it can be an interesting challenge to write around racing when the kind of main activity that players are doing most of the time is driving from point A to B. So with that kind of in mind, I tend to focus on like character interactions, or if there's something big, I'll generally imply it happening off screen, because we can kind of think of the best ideas in the world, but if it's kind of at odds with what players are doing in the game, it just kind of doesn't feel right. And as we were kind of touched on earlier, with continuing these stories, a lot of it's just like planning and getting down at least high level documentation in advance, so we kind of know the direction we're headed. Something that was pretty crucial with Revolution. So it didn't just kind of feel all messy and made up at the last minute.
Well, as you're wrapping up this giant saga, kind of looking ahead, do you have the story arc for like the next 5 years plotted out?
Look, the focus has been on Revolution for most of this year, to be honest. We are at the stage where we're kind of throwing ideas around, but that's... we'll probably have more to say about that coming soon. But there's also still side events that we can continue drawing upon. Stuff we recently explored in events like Enigma Complex or Brothers of Blackridge. Just because the story is going to end with Revolution doesn't mean there's not more where we can tell in the future. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Sean, for joining us as always. But a big thank you to you, Jake. It was really interesting learning about the development of these storylines and how it works for mobile for this game that is just so complex with 5 years of narrative. So yeah, thank you for joining us, Jake.
Thanks for having me on board. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you as well, Sean, for joining.
I'm always happy to be here.
Well, this update is partially brought to you by Film Victoria. So we want to give a big thanks to everyone at Film Victoria. We really appreciate your support here at Fire Monkey Studio. And finally, play our latest update of Uprising and prove that you have what it takes to rule the streets.